Good morning, Misha.
Hey Jess, how are you?
Good. How are you today?
Really good. Yourself?
Yeah, good. I've had a good weekend. It's a sunny day. What could go wrong? Everything's just beautiful.
Well, it's not sunny here. It's cold and grey.
Yeah.
But and raining. Oh no, actually it stopped raining, but it's cold, very cold. But I still feel very good nonetheless.
Yeah. And we're
Yeah.
both laughing because we're happy to talk about the topic that we've decided
Mm.
on today, which
Yeah,
is something that shows up every day for all of us. And yeah, that's the dance between light and dark of our humanity.
Yep, light and dark of our own personal experience, and so internal and external, I would say, which is the same thing. But it's yeah, I'm excited to talk about that. That is a juicy topic.
And it's come up a lot lately because of the noticing that we've put intention with the podcast. And hopefully it keeps coming. Like we've set this intention to notice things about the behaviors that we get into, the relational dance with other people, and even ourselves. Because I mean, I don't know if we've mentioned this in the podcast before, but a lot of what happens in relationship to others is usually a very big reflection on the relationship we have with ourselves. And what does that mean? But it's this kind of yin yang dance of perhaps pointing out where others are wrong or where others are doing things, and then working out, somewhere in ourselves, understanding things, getting to a place where we can feel one way and then we can feel another way. Is that what you understand around the yin and yang?
Yeah, you said dance before, and we've certainly mentioned that a few times. And the dance aspect of it would point to the fact that when we're talking about light and dark, we're moving between light and dark in terms of how we feel. So it might be, 1 minute. I think we're pointing to the dance element of that in terms of our experience all the time, especially when we're doing personal development work. And I suspect even outside of that, just we're constantly moving through, experiences of things being really shit, like my emotions, external things that are happening that are, affecting us, and they would be perceived as negative, and then we will really want to not feel that negative feeling or the horrible or dark things that are happening or whatever. So then we'll want to move towards the light. And how can we achieve that, and how do we achieve that? But I think what we're pointing to is just the whole experience. If we go outside of that and just look and think, this is the experience we're having, and just to be okay with that. I think the more that we can get okay with being in light parts and being in dark parts. So, I think the propensity is always to try to move towards light. How can we make things light? How can it be, how can we be happier? How can we be upbeat? How can we, but really I would say the shadow stuff or the darker stuff is part of it too. And to try and avoid it is trying to kind of avoid our experience. And I'm not about that. I'm really about embodying both. It's kind of like, okay, we do have these darker sides. I like to, get to really know what they are. Doesn't mean I don't like it. Sometimes it's really uncomfortable. I think I said that last week. Sometimes when I'm going through stuff, I'm like, oh, this is yuck. I just want to get out of it. But then once you do get out of it, you can reflect on some of those darker elements or those, places that we've been, and you learn a lot from them. You really do. And if you can experience them, now each of us are going to have our different experiences and how long we can withstand being in a so-called dark place. But I feel like if we can just see that it is a dance, it is a dance, it is a this and accept that, then those darker places are easier to bear. And
If we
we can
accept
actually come
what?
out of it. Accept that there's a dance between the two. It's
Yeah.
a dance
Mhm.
between the light and shadow, the yin and the yang, as you said earlier. But it's just a dance, and if we can just accept that it is,
Mhm.
then we can.
Is it like this is just temporary scenario?
Yeah, it is. Sometimes it doesn't feel
Yep.
that way. I get that.
Yeah.
When you're in those darker places, it doesn't feel that it's temporary. It feels like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. And the emotions around it are really hard to bear sometimes.
Mm.
But and which is why we're all so keen, and we think there's something wrong with us because we're in these dark places, and we talked about society earlier, but society would suggest that those dark places, societal expectations, and would suggest that those dark places, they're not needed here. Thank you very much. We need upbeat, we need positive, we need, we need the light. And we do.
I think it's important to highlight also that when we think of the dark places, a lot of us are constantly avoiding. We're avoiding going to those dark places. And it just makes that, it almost seems like it's chasing you even more.
Yeah.
Because you haven't learned to be there. You haven't learned to sit in the dark place. You haven't learned to feel and experience what that is. And I like that you say, it's like a reminder that this is just temporary. So you can have that kind of in the background. You can have that just on the side here, kind of saying, this is just temporary. But it's important to also know that we have to sit in there sometimes if we're going to see what there is to see or feel what there is to feel in that dark place. And what is that dark place? What is it? It's full of information. It's full of data on yourself and, what's going on in the background and, on a deep level. And you and I have spoken about belief systems, some belief systems that we're carrying that perhaps we don't know we're carrying, but somehow they're coming through our language of how we see ourselves, how we see other people. And so if we don't ever go into the dark place, we don't ever sit in that yuckiness and all of those feelings that come up in the dark place, we don't ever get to understand each other. We don't get to understand ourselves, and we don't get to see parts of ourselves, and we also don't even get to choose, because when you look in, you get to see parts of yourself, and then it's almost like, hang on, I see something there. I haven't chosen that. How did that get in there? So when you do go in there, you're at a place where you can at least choose if you want to keep that in there. This might sound like a lot of weird things because you and I have had conversations and we have a lot of prior knowledge about what we're saying. But
very good point.
At a very general level, when people are feeling that there's something coming up, an emotion that's going to take them to a dark place, how does it feel to be there? What happens in the body? Do you have, because I can talk about something that I would probably avoid, which is something very human that we all avoid, would be shame. I think that would be one of the biggest things we don't. It's just like, want to avoid that. I don't want to go there. I don't want anyone to even say things that might suggest something that might trigger a shame attack in me. And when I mean shame, I mean the process of looking at myself and going, that is disgusting, or you're not worth something, or you don't have a value, or, nobody here accepts that part of you. You should make sure that that's very hidden. You should make sure that nobody sees that you've got that, And And
Gollum,
that,
like Gollum, you know, out of Lord of the Rings. I always think of shame as being my Gollum, you know, like
oh, really?
just hide it away. Not that my precious bit, but it's kind of you just hide away in the cave and like, oh, I don't want to go out there and expose this part of me. It's ugly. It's no one needs to see this. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
And, you know, I have felt shame recently, and I definitely understand it in my body. Because I've gone to those dark places to work out why it's there, what is this, and it just feels, to me, when shame comes in, for example, it feels like I'm sweating almost. It feels like something's been highlighted and there's a big torch on me. There's like a big torch on me with a lot of heat.
Everybody can see it. It's all of a sudden, oh
And,
my
you
God,
know, you
everybody
get
can
all
see it.
red, you get all embarrassed.
Mm.
It's like, how can I hide? How can I lift this invisible sheet up so nobody can see me? How does shame feel in your body? Have you felt that recently, or have you felt that ever?
Yeah, God, yeah.
And we all feel it
Yeah,
every day,
yeah,
but
yeah.
sometimes you just don't notice. It's like little bits that come in and disappear.
Yeah, for me, I think shame is a default emotion immediately, unconsciously, you know, just in this sense. I don't half the time I'm not even aware of it. You know, I'm like, oh my God, I feel this deep shame. It's a default mechanism that kicks in, you know, straight away as soon as I've recognized or as soon as I feel like I've been exposed or I expose myself, you know, like you know, if someone says to me, oh, you did this, say for example, the immediate response would probably be for me, right? It just depends. Sometimes I might get defensive and get angry instead, but maybe later or as well, you know, I mean, even, you know, shame would come up potentially, and those feelings of like yuckiness, like you described. I don't think oh yeah, no, I mean, I sweat too. Just because I remember a scenario where somebody did that, you did this, and I started getting hot all of a sudden. You know, I had to take off my jumper. I remember just going, oh God, I'm getting really hot, and you know, so yeah, that certainly did happen as well. But the icky feelings on the inside, you know, they just like, I want to go and hide. I always want to go run and hide. You know, I'm like, oh, I just want to get away. Go away, leave me alone. You know, I need to be left alone because I've got to go and hide this thing that's been exposed to the world. You know, I've got to go and hide it so nobody can see it. And all of a sudden, I think everybody can see it. I just said that before. You know, it's like, oh, everyone sees it, don't they? You know, so I feel shame about it, and I want to protect it. I want to go and protect this thing, this golem. I describe it as golem because
I
it
love
is.
that.
It's kind of
Golem.
like, oh,
Because it's
you
ugly
know,
too.
yeah, it's ugly and wretched, and you know, this tiny little, you know, pale white, you know, wretched thing. You know,
I
it's
love
just,
that it's pale too. It just
yeah.
has not seen the sunlight.
It hasn't, and it's all skinny and like big eyes like Gollum, you know. It's just that in my
Yeah.
mind, if I think
Coming
of
out of the
how it
darkness.
looks, yeah, it's that, just hiding in the darkness with a few strands of hair, and you know. And my precious part, I mean, even that's a really good metaphor. It's kind of like I've just got to hold on to the tiny little bit of whatever I've got left of me inside that's good, you know. You just go, you know, and you know, it's
Any
that
sense of dignity.
any sense of dignity or, you know, goodness that I've got left. Surely I've
Yeah.
got something in there, because it becomes so big, you know.
Yeah.
It's like it just becomes this massive, for me, shame just becomes this hugely inflated scenario where all of a sudden I've got to go and take my thing and hide it. And, you know, and then, yeah, like you said, you know, it's how long can I withstand having a look at, I mean, you know, that is another thing. But shame is certainly one of those ways in terms of the dark, you know, that that I might not want to have a look at, you know. I just might go, oh no, I can't address that.
Yeah. It's definitely a big one for me. It's one that comes up, and like you say, it's almost like a default. Before I've even caught it, my body's caught it. My body's faster at that. It just goes, what? I've got it. Here you go. And it spreads through my body, and I can get a bit rigid about it. My fingers cramp up, I think, almost as I sit in the heat of it, the heat of being exposed, It's like they've all seen now. And it could just be something that I just think that I'm wrong about, or, it could just be a belief system. It could be something that I think on a deep level about myself, oh, I'm too fat, I'm too short, I'm too thin, I'm too, I don't know, whatever I can make up in my head about a thought about myself. And I believe it. And if anything to the contrary of that comes in, I'm exposed,
Is that like that agreement thing that we've talked about many times? So are you saying that basically if some sort of messaging comes in, whatever it is, whether it's someone saying something or you seeing something on TV, or the news or whatever, and then instantly shame gets triggered?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what's happening for a lot of young girls at the moment, with social media being so massive, such an influence. If you see something on social media that you don't look like, definitely don't look like that, it's going to create that shame. Well, I don't look like that. And apparently this is attractive. Apparently this weight is attractive. Apparently this level of intelligence is attractive. Apparently these houses, if you don't have these houses and these cars, you should feel shame. If you don't have the job that everybody else has, you can feel shame. It's about whatever we're creating in our head that we're not matching, a certain standard. And if you believe it, if you agree with it, which is what we were talking about in previous podcasts, if you agree with it, you've matched that, then what does that mean about you?
Yeah, and you've just described a whole heap of external ways that we can feel shame. So how we look on the outside, or what's perceived from how, what we have on the outside. But, I mean, certainly for me, shame comes up with internal experiences. So those kinds of things, remember how we talked about the podcast last week, how we match, for example, those kinds of things I probably wouldn't feel so much shame around. That I just don't put as high a value in those things. And there's lots of reasons why. And you were talking about, in a conversation you and I had outside of the podcast today, that it's something about societal expectations. And sometimes in our community, we societally have had those expectations put on us, or familial, whatever, it doesn't matter. And we take that on. For me, so much, it's more internal experiences where I have shame. It might be that I'm not intelligent enough, or I'm not, I don't know, whatever. It could just be that anyone sort of points out about what I do or don't do right or wrong, or, and then all of a sudden I feel shame. I'll be like, oh, I feel shame that I just didn't get that right. Or, I didn't, I wasn't smart enough, or I didn't, that's how I probably could feel shame with internal experiences. So, yeah, it's interesting. That's really interesting how it can show up, or what the mechanism for it to show up is. But it shows up nonetheless, and you know about it, and it can prevent you. Well, I mean, like you and I have often said, it is an opportunity for us to have a look at it and grow from it, because after all, that's what we are about. We're all about personal development. But there can be fear around going to shame, and because it is perceived as a dark thing, to actually sit in that and experience it and learn from it, and rather we'd probably, most of us, when it comes to shame, we would look to avoid it, deflect it, run away from it, go to the so-called light, and look for a positive experience to try and remove it from us, so that we don't have to do anything with it. We can just put it somewhere, and anytime it arises, just put it somewhere else, You don't want it in us. And when I say in us, it's like what you described before. We can feel it in our bodies. It's a felt sense. It's an emotion. It's a, you know, it can even be a physical thing for some people. Shame might show up as pain, you know, physical pain, not emotional pain. And certainly back in the day that you've had penance as well. You know, you'd have to go confessional, or you would, you know, for your shame. Yep, self-flagellation, which we can do. I mean, I certainly am one of those personality types that has in the past beat myself up, you know, with, you know, just like, oh, because of shame. You know, it's like, oh, that's terrible, you're terrible, you lack in so many ways because of that golem-like thing that you have. You know, you're a lesser person as a result, apparently. And these are certainly the stories we tell ourselves when shame arises.
And when that arises, we can avoid it. We can avoid it very quickly by trying to deflect, or, you know, look over there. Like, oh, what's happened? Anyway, let's talk about you. You know, we can argue and say no. You know, your opinions or whatever. That no, they don't even affect me. We can do all sorts of things. We can argue
stories
with people. We can build the stories
around other things to focus on. So redirect our focus.
Exactly. Just so much avoidance of it, because it is so scary. It seems like a world away from the person you've built that can withstand things. You're trying to stay balanced in your life. You're trying to manage life, your life, children. You're trying to manage bills. You're trying to do so many things. And then this thing comes in.
That story too. I'm a this, I'm a that. So shame doesn't fit into the part where you tell yourself you're this kind of citizen. You're that kind of moralistic person. If you've painted a story about yourself, it is really hard to break that story down with some sort
you want to sit in that
you have in your personality.
And you want to sit in those things that you've built that work for a functional family, that work for a system, that work for yourself to be balanced, you know, so you can be stable in your emotions so that you can function, you know. So, but when this thing comes up that, you know, is kind of calling for, but there's this little thing that you've got in here that's not really part of the whole system that seems to be working. There's this other thing that wants to pull you in and drag you down, reminding you what you really are, or you know, what your weaknesses are, or what your ugly side is. You know, look at this now.
I think it's a very good point. I think there's a fear that you're going to disrupt all of that. You know, you're going to disrupt.
It's going to crumble. Everything will crumble if you look at that. Part of it.
Going to throw a spanner in the works or something. You know, make a huge change to everything.
And what does it mean? Like, what does it mean if I'm an ugly person in these other ways here? Does it mean the rest that I've built is bullshit?
100%. Yeah.
You know, you go into those, you kind of go into that analyzing, and there's a bit of a fear like that comes up, because is this the real me then? Or is that the real me? Where am I? What is real? You know, you can get into that place, but all of it is real. Because we're so complex. Everything that you've done that is good is real. All your weaknesses are real too. All your faults are real. Everything is part of the mix. But when you get into that, when that calling for, hey, look in here, look at this dark drawer you haven't, you know, gone into, you've left a couple of little things in here that you want to keep the door locked on, you know, when that's calling you to have a look in there, it can feel like if you do look in there, everything else will crumble. So you don't want to go there. You want to keep it tucked away, and you want to avoid it as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think because we do avoid it, we could catastrophize the thing, you know. So it's like, that's why you think what you just said before. I think we think, oh, this is all of who I am, because you've hidden it somewhere in this box somewhere, and it's like you've hidden it because you actually think, oh, that's actually who I am. You know, so and so pointed it out to me. My mum or dad pointed it out to me, or, you know, someone pointed it out to me, and they did it repeatedly. So it's in there for a reason. It has to stay in there. It's all of it. We catastrophize and think it's going to become all of who we are all of a sudden, you know. And it's kind of like we worry that the thing's going to just infiltrate, like become this virus or poison that just all of a sudden is going to taint every other experience, every other part of who we are, every other part of our personality. You know, it's almost, it will take over, and this thing that we're ashamed of, you know, it speaks to all of our experience all of a sudden. You know, that's where we can go. We can catastrophize it to that point.
Because we're allowing ourselves to look through the lens of that ugliness. And then it becomes something that, if you look through the lens of that ugliness,
but it's not even ugly. Like, we just perceive it to be ugly.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just using those words because we perceive it to be ugly, and we want to hide it. We want to hide the ugly. We want to hide those parts of us that aren't strong enough, or, you know, we perceive it to be wrong. But when you look through the lens of that, the rest of your life, of what you've constructed, or even yourself, you get to see things a little bit different. It's a different shift. And so that might be a little bit scary too, to look through, you know?
And you pointed something out in a conversation we had outside of this podcast, about the fact that it becomes so ugly, you know, so big and ugly because of, you know, I mean, this one thing that we might be in shame about, it could be something that it's been ingrained, or we've been conditioned to think is quite an ugly thing for quite some time. You know, we could go back and like you said, it could go back generations, let alone just in this generation or this lifetime. I mean, it could be a familial thing that's gone back in generations, or a community thing that's been gone back for generations. So if it is perceived to be ugly, then that's going to be a really hard thing to confront and say, no, it's not. You know, your own little voice standing there going, it's not ugly. You know, it's just me.
Yeah.
It's not ugly. But that's hard when you've had generations potentially of that kind of information being construed as ugly. You know, that data being construed as ugly. So it is going to be hard. And you do want to go and hide in a cave like Gollum and go, I have to stay in this cave because everybody out there says it's ugly, and I should not have this trait or this thing.
It reminds it's true. It reminds me of this story, and I've spoken to you about this story. How, like, I come from a very big family, and it's always been, in this family, it's always been around music, around instruments, around performance, and about expressing things on stage. Like, ever since I was little, I remember one of my first memories of my auntie showing me how to put mascara on and singing to me while she was doing it. So I have a memory of her face as I was watching her, and her showing me how you put mascara on, but she was singing because the radio was on. And so it was just like, wow, you sing, you know, you sing and you celebrate how you're feeling and you express yourself. And so when we arrived in Australia, my dad created one of the first Latin bands in Australia, and his band used to rehearse in our garage in Springvale. And every time he'd rehearse, he'd be like, you know, are you coming in? And I go, yeah. So he's a drummer. And so I would just dance next to his drums because I loved the way that he played drums and how the band got together. And so I would have been maybe 4 or 5. And so then when the parties started and he did the dances, he'd go on stage and I'd be like, I've got to be there. Like, I've got to be in front of the drums expressing the music. And so I learned that as soon as the music started, I was at the front expressing myself and dancing to, the beats that my dad was making. And then somebody in my life said, that's how you create a narcissist. You basically get them to want other people to look at them. You teach them. Parents are basically teaching children that then they don't have any value unless people are admiring them and looking at them. And that's basically how you create a narcissist in your head, like how you become a narcissist. And it shocked me because I started to, I started to go, hang on, is that maybe I'm a narcissist, or maybe this is this true? Like, complete shame came into my body. How could you think that what you were doing was right? Dancing and expressing yourself. I felt ashamed to be in front of people. If someone said, hey, Jess, what do you think about this? I'd probably hide that or not say much. Or if someone said, hey, show us how you play the drums, I'd be like, no, oh my God, the shame of it, So it matched what this person said, almost matched a belief system that I had.
Yeah.
And it affected me quite a lot. And then, so I think, what is the right thing there? The matching, a real shame that I felt in the body, or is it the belief system that somehow was in my body that was matching the statement? And so because I thought that might be true, my body I did not want to dance. I did not want to go in the public sphere. It was like, no, you don't get to be there, just in case it's because of the admiration, just in case it's because of the eyes, not because you have something important to say.
Yeah.
And so, so what I was going to get to was that's how it started to affect me in my life. Like it, and then that kind of thing affects the people that are around me. If I have a belief system that's coming through the way that I'm living, the way that I'm expressing myself, it could affect the people around me in all sorts of ways, because they're picking up messages about what I'm thinking about it, what I'm saying about it, what I'm not doing, what I am doing. So that shame, the belief system that created the shame, is then impacting on so many levels of me and the people that I surround myself with.
So many. And that's just one belief.
That's just one,
and
yeah.
how shame shows up. Yeah.
And how it's affected down the track.
The flow-on effect.
The flow-on effect, and that matching as well. I thought that was a really good example of the matching, because if somebody says that, they could say anything, really. But because it matched a belief system that I had inside me, it created a big, big trigger for me to go into that shame experience in my body.
Yeah. Yeah. And so obviously that's not something that you learned until later in life, how to look at shame. So you would say that you kind of that's how you avoided it, to then, I don't have to look at shame, I'll just hide inside myself.
Yeah, I don't want to be out in the open. I don't want to be on stage. I don't want to be public speaking. I don't want to be commenting in arenas where there's a big debate, or I don't want to be out there doing whatever.
So would you say that shame, because if you took action then to avoid doing that thing that was so-called narcissistic, you avoided it, and then it arose as shame. In other words, any time that you would have to, shame would obviously then rise up. Why would it rise up then if you avoided it? So was the avoidance itself shame? Do you know what I'm saying? So shame showed up because it was like, okay, I can't do that thing. And any time that you had the feeling that you wanted to, then shame would rise up. That's kind of what I was trying to get to.
Yeah,
so how did it show
definitely.
up? Did it show up from that point on? So you might have this natural propensity to want to get up and someone's playing the drums, I want to get up and dance. Yeah.
Yes.
But
yeah,
you're like, oh, stop that, Jess. I can't do that.
yeah.
Shame.
There'll be eyes on you. There'll be eyes on you,
Yes.
Jess.
Yeah.
The people will see you, and then they'll make comments.
And you'll be acting like a narcissist. You'll be acting like an attention seeker.
An attention seeker. And so I'm avoiding being called that, seen as that. I want to avoid people seeing me as that, instead of me going, that's your problem. Like if we had all done the work when we were little, man, we wouldn't have a channel. But but obviously this happens in our life, that things just progress, and there's little bits, there's glimpses of things that are in there that are underneath the surface. And this was a big one for me, because I've avoided being in the limelight. I've avoided doing lots of these things, because then I'm exposed to what they think, and they might be right, as opposed to just being in my natural body as a little girl going, this is how you feel the stuff, the energy in the room. Let me show you.
So we trade off joy for shame. It's kind of like you miss out on all those moments of just feeling
not just
it
joy,
and going
it's way bigger, Misha. It's authenticity.
Yes, authenticity.
I'm trading off something that is in me, in innate. Like it's just, that's how I arrived. I arrived to show people things. That's my authentic self, is let me show you out my life. Let me show you how to live. Let me show you how to dance to the music. But down the track somewhere, as a little girl, somewhere down in my life, the shame came in. Oh, you're one of those people. You're one of those people that everybody, you need everybody to see you. You need everybody to want to be looking at you, or whatever.
I think that's a very good point and path to take from is when you talk about we're trading off authenticity. So however that shows up, we trade it off for shame. In other words, don't do you. Someone in some stage of our life has told us not to do you, whether it's a person, an individual, or society, or whatever, it doesn't matter.
Or circumstances,
Yeah. Don't do you. Put that away. Put it somewhere else, and don't you bring it out, or else these are the consequences if you do.
Yeah, hide that.
Hide it. So then, of course, whenever throughout our lives, and now I'm 48, and I've been doing battle between shame and doing me. So I'm just like, oh, I want to do. There's a part of me that's always wanted to do me, but you can't. You got to put that away. So shame, the shame. I'm doing that thing I was warned against many, many times in my life. And so that's why the golem was created, because it's just like, I'll put, over there, it's got to go and sit over there in the corner, in the dark corner somewhere. So, yeah.
And who wants to love the golem? Seriously. Do you want to love the golem? Like,
I do now.
Honestly, do you want to love that ugly thing with no hair, big teeth, big giant eyes, squirmy, doesn't even have a voice? Like, how disgusting, But that's essentially what we have to do. To be able to go, I'm going to sit with this ugly beast here for a bit.
Yeah. Classic. Yes. I hear what you're saying.
I understand what you're saying too, Misha, that when we have these conversations and we see how vulnerable the golem is, we do want to love it and hug it and go, oh, come here. Did I do that to myself?
Yeah, we do
But
now.
and that is in the work that we're doing in personal development, you know. Who does want to love their golem? Nobody. We usually want to just hide.
It's a good
that part of
catchphrase.
us.
Love your golem.
Come and love your golem.
Come and love your golem. With Misha and Jess.
It sounds like a piece of, I don't know, meat that sticks out the side of us or something. I don't know. Come and love your golem. We're carrying around this little piece of skin, like, or dead
one of those
skin.
corms on your toes or whatever, those, you know, people grow those little corms or whatever you call it on your toes, or
come and love your corn.
The, you know, the ugly things that show up on our body that we would, like moles, or, you know, what do you call, you know, all of them. That's
like a piece of dead skin that's hanging around the back of this. Is I'm dragging this around, but I've tucked it in my socks.
I know, and you got to feel. I mean, I do, when we talk about it like this, and we can, in hindsight, you know, looking back on, we can. It's so easy to talk about it, and certainly joke about it, you know. And thank God we're not in a moment where we can't, you know, we can actually have a joke about it. But we do. I completely, and I know you understand too, that clearly that's why we're talking about the golem. But those times when it just seems huge, that cave that golem lives in can be massive. Like, it's huge, really, really big. And I think there is a lot of stigma around looking at the golem, in, you know, obviously because of what we've just described about shame. There's so much of it I see in society, particularly with men. You know, they say, the statistics say apparently that, you know, a lot of men find it hard to confront their golem. But, you know, whatever, maybe they don't need to. I don't know. I can't say, because I'm not a man, to be honest. So I do find that difficult to comment on. But there is a lot of stigma. You know, I just think that it's difficult for people to do personal development work, because then they have to bring out their golem, you know. Yeah.
But we do it in a safe space.
Well, this is the thing. Well, it's a very good point you make, Jess, because it goes back to that conversation of perceived fear. But, you know, it's true, they can do it in a safe space. Taking that first step is huge, because what is a safe space? Who is safe? Who can you trust? I mean, how do you know that who you're going to speak to you can trust, and they're going to hold your personal experience in a way that can be nurtured, in a way that's respectful of what they're going through. That's a huge step. You know, you're dealing with a whole cave of stuff, essentially, you know, and you just, how do you know? How are you going to know? I mean, you just got to take that first step sometimes. It's true, and be brave enough just to take that first step and say, okay, you know, I've got a lot of shame or whatever, you know, around this issue. And it's an incredibly brave thing to go to a strange person, if it's not someone that you want to share it with, you know, that you know personally. It's incredibly brave to say, hey, strange person, can you just have a look at this little thing that's huge to me? You know, it's huge. I need to have a look at it. But I do actually really, that's why I've mentioned in the past, it is a privilege to be able to share those experiences with somebody, because it's massive, you know, some of the things that can be, that people
absolutely
can, like you said, you know, pull around with us. We're all doing it. We're all pulling our stuff around with us. I mean, I think
it's a massive privilege.
It is. And I think for you and I, even just doing this podcast, and we talking about the light and dark, it is our way of, you know, processing a lot of things too. You know, it's just a way of working through these things, and sometimes having a laugh, and sometimes feeling a little bit heavy about it. Sometimes offering up solutions that make a lot of sense. Sometimes they don't, but we're doing that dance. You know, we're trying to work through this stuff and say, hey, we've got golems. too.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have solutions. We have these fantastic solutions that have helped us both immensely. It is a dance.
Yeah. And
Speaking of
essentially what
dancing.
we're saying with this podcast is step one, be brave to look in that drawer, you know, be
Yeah.
brave to sit with your golem, to sit with that ugly side, what you think is ugly.
And it doesn't have to be big either, you know. I mean, we could all have a huge cave, you know, where we sit as golem, and there's all sorts of things like shame, envy, jealousy, you know, I don't know, like whatever, you know, those whole list of things that we could have in our cave sitting with us. But it doesn't actually have to be a big thing. It can be a really small thing that you start addressing. You know, you can start little steps. You know, it can just start with, like I brought up rejection. That can be quite big for some people, but it might not be. It might be just a little thing. Oh yeah, I'll work on that first. You know, it doesn't have to be, I'm going to take my whole cave full of things to see somebody and they're going to fix all. That said, I recognize too that sometimes, like we just pointed out, that's honestly what we think we have. You know, a whole cave full of stuff that's needs to be addressed and needs to be looked at. You know, I get that, but it isn't necessarily, you know, a whole cave full of things. And honestly, we all kind of have anyway. So it's just like, how about we just start, you know, little steps. And learn some
Small
tools
steps
around those, and they can be applied. And certainly you and I, over the years of, you know, we might start off with something, and then, you know, the more tools we get over the years too, you can deal with bigger things, you know, as time goes on.
That's right. As you hold more strength in your body, as you get braver, and as you get more resilient in being able to sit with pain and sit with mistakes and sit with whatever you perceive to be a weakness.
Yeah.
So how do you do it, Misha?
How do I do what?
How do you sit with that? How do you sit? Not you personally, but how do we do it? How do we sit with that ugly stuff? How do we sit with Gollum? Or how do we love Gollum when he's so ugly and so creepy?
Well, I think we can both now, we're both sitting happily in a safe space, and we can talk about it and joke about it. And I think it's good to start in these kind of safe spaces first, where you just go, right, you know, let's talk about Gollum. Nothing's getting hurt, nothing's getting touched. We're not sitting in anything that we're already hijacked by or affected by, you know. So it's good to just create that understanding and awareness first, which is, I suppose, what we're doing this whole podcast for, is, hey, it's okay, you know, that's okay that we have this stuff. Create, you know, like, if all of these things that we feel shame around, start creating a new narrative. It's okay, you know. And this is not new news. We're not saying something you and I that so many people are saying across the globe. Say it's okay to have this stuff. And this is what it looks like, you know. And when you know, and when I'm ready, like, I know myself, if I've got stuff that needs sorted, it's not like I'm just going to go, right, I'm going to go and sort it all out right now. It's like, I go, well, I can have a look at this. This is okay. I'll have a look at this. You know, it's not too bad in terms of how much emotion it draws towards me, or how triggered I'm going to get, or whatever. It's something that I can look at that's just, it certainly does activate me, you know. I can get hijacked from it, but it's not so big that I have to wade through these, you know, go into the deepest depths of my cave. Everyone's going to be different about what they can deal with, I think. And it is about knowing, okay, I'll just go and have a look at this. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Then you go and have a look at something else, and then you go. That's how I've learned to love the Golem, I think. And
so it's come from a decision. So you've decided to go in and have a look at small ones at your pace.
At my pace. I wouldn't say they're small compared to other people, because I'm a bit of a deep diver. That's my personality. But certainly I can, like you say, decide, and sometimes I will have a look at something big, sometimes it'll be small, but I decided at one stage I need to have a look at these things.
And what we decide on to look at, we do get the messages of what they are. Like I was explaining, this whole heat thing happens in the body. You want to run, you've got sweaty hands, there's like a limelight on you. It's like, they can be messages and triggers for other things as well, like fear or, wake up, or I don't know, lots of things. But they're little messages that kind of give you signals as to, hang on, there's something here. There's something here that's a bit shadowy. Something here you're locking away, you're putting away, you're hiding. So if you notice the body giving you the message, then you could go, oh, I might decide to have a look at what that was.
Yeah. And I think that's what that's why we both thought noticing was a really good topic to talk about, because there's a tool already that allows you to just have a look at those indicators that you're talking about. Just have a look at them. Can I deal with that one? Yes, I can. Or can I have a look at that one? Yes, I can. And there's so many ways that you can look at these things. I mean, there really is. But and how we choose to go through them too is also our choice, as you say.
Yep. That's right. It's always our choice. We get to drive, we get to always drive how we want to shift through the world, how we want to look at things, and how we want to, what we want with them. It's always us driving it. And if you want to have a look at those things, this is a good start. Pick one of those. Pick one of those. What does it feel like first?
It's a very good point. That, because I think the what does it feel like is a really good indicator. Is it really big, or is it just a little niggle? Like, is it a little niggle that keeps? But often I think that we find that people come, well, I certainly see this when there's a lot, it's kind of like they get to breaking point, and it actually probably doesn't have to be that, you could actually come sooner than breaking point, like you just suggested. It could be just, what's going on here? I want to have a look at this, This is the thing. And I think coaching really lends itself well to that, because essentially that's what, we're a block building, mechanism, really. It's like, let's build blocks. So you can have a look at just this little thing, like personal, like public speaking, or, or whatever, or just something that's, doesn't have to be big and deep and dark, can just be like, something little that you just want to get over and build from there. Like you said, the resilience building thing.
Yeah. I mean, the more willing we are to look at those small ones, then we can get to the big, the bigger ones. You can even look at the bigger ones, but you don't have to go deep in it either. You can just get a glimpse or something. If there's all these choices. Everything is your choice. Everything is what you decide that you want to, how you want to move through things, how you want to move through life.
Yeah, certainly. I remember even just doing the NLP course, the prac course, there's definitely that message was there. You don't have to go deep. You don't have to go deep. My propensity and just the personality I was to go deep. Like, I used to go, let's have a look at this really deep thing. But I see now that that's not even, I don't have to. It's kind of like probably what I would say all I knew until I realized, because that was my personality, swimming around in the deep, dark cave. But then I realized that, you actually don't have to. And in terms of resilience building, unless you are able to support yourself effectively through this kind of work, it's advisable not to. Until,
and that's why you have a coach. That's why you go towards a coach.
Because then you'll just run in the other direction. It's kind of like, if you go put it all there on the line, all your little golems, it could be you find that the work gets really hard and you just want to avoid it, go in the other direction. No, too much, too hard, too much to look at, too much shame, guilt, whatever comes up. And it doesn't have to be that full on, I think.
Yeah. So it's good to choose. It's good to choose your battles. It's good to choose what you want to have a look at, and you can do it in a loving way.
Yeah.
You can sit there and feel whatever you'd like to feel about it, and be, try and be okay with what you see. Try and love that thing. And I know it sounds easy, but it can be difficult to love your golem.
It can. I think that's why we wanted to talk about this, because we can both identify and see that this is truly it's a dance between. I want to say dance. I don't want to say battle. I want to say dance, because I think that if we really just see that, if we can just move between the two, when I say two, the so-called light and dark, if we can just move between those things easier, then it's kind of sit with them, and see that it is just, that is the whole experience. It's not just, well, actually, this is a good point. Earlier you talked about how we avoid the shadow, we avoid the darker places, but also some personalities can avoid the light. They also want to sit in in their pain and in melancholy and in lack and in, just, oh, I'm not enough. And, that some people do like to sit in that, and it's kind of an avoidance of going towards the light as well. It's like, if I just sit here like, golem in the shadows and stay there, and then there's a fear of what to move towards trying as well. It's like, it's just easier to just sit in all the muck sometimes. So I certainly have known, including that to be an
it's easier to sit in the muck.
Yeah, it can be. It's easier to sit in melancholy, or sadness, or worry, all those things that kind of can be a bit easier to sit in them, because it's what you probably taught yourself from a very young age to that's easier. It doesn't,
it's like a
feel
superpower.
Good. Yeah, it doesn't actually feel good, but it's just easier, because you know it. You know it so well, and you know it more than being positive, or you know it more than to be optimistic, or you know it more than achieving something that you want to achieve. It's just easier to do this.
And look, it is a tool. It is definitely a tool. Like I say, it's a superpower. It can be a superpower, because if you can sit in the muck and love yourself in the dark place, love yourself, love your shadow, love that part that tries to hide, that tries to say, no, I don't want to be seen. I don't want this bit to be seen, because it doesn't make me somebody that others are going to love or others are going to approve of. If you can love that, it diminishes that power of the shame. So it is a superpower. But when you've got the dance of the light, and this is where I do a lot of work, because type 3, goal-oriented, outcome-focused.
Yeah.
So
whereas type 4, shadow,
yeah.
Let's go in. Let's just hold all that.
And that's where the balance would come in. Is it useful? Is it getting you what you want?
Exactly.
And that's the ability to be able to have a look at the other side, and is it useful what I'm doing? Is it getting me what I'm heading towards? Is it orienting me to the place where the other work is, in building and constructing?
Yeah. I think what's just come up by you saying that is kind of, because there's also, there's people that also stay in positivity, like
that toxic positivity.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, you've just got to, And of course, and naturally the propensity for us all is to pull away and move away too. A majority of people, because clearly I just pointed out people that like to stay in the shadow and stay dark, and however, and especially societally, so it's like, oh yes, go towards the light, be positive, achieve at a high level, and all those things are all what we call positive, and so when I wanted to talk specifically about the dance between the light and dark is because if we can actually just step back a bit and just see that actually our whole experience is a mix of the two, it is a mix of the two, and just embrace that rather than trying to push towards any end of the spectrum. It's just dance between that, see it for what it is, and you will naturally achieve or naturally find happiness, as well as times of that are a little bit less happier, less productive, less less effective, less, you will have times like that as well. And I think it's just we don't put so much weight on either end of the spectrum saying this is better or that's better or whatever. It's kind of like just do the just be part of the process, and how just be and find more acceptance and surrender in that process, is what I would say. And I feel like naturally that outcome, just that attitude alone, is going to be better for you because it's less resistance and less
avoidance.
weight. Less avoidance and less weight put on it. It's kind of like
and I like that you use the word surrender, because it speaks to, you don't have to do anything here. You don't have to do the avoiding. You don't have to do the deflecting. You don't have to try and create a persona constantly to cover the hidden part. It's just, what if it's okay? What if you just let go of whatever you're trying to do, just be without anything in the way, without even being, I have to put up this thing, or I don't have to be this, or, just being, just surrendering for a little bit,
Yep.
And that's where the two things are constantly doing it anyway. Like if you're doing the dance, it almost sounds like there's work to do here and then work to do over there, and it's exhausting, Sometimes staying out of it completely and just being, and just looking at it, and go, wow, I see the dance, but I don't have to be in it. That can be quite helpful, just to be, without trying to be something else, just be, just breathing, just living.
Yeah, it's true, 100%.
So it would be like almost sitting in the middle, how when you're on a seesaw and you're the one standing in the middle and it feels like it's barely moving and your legs are just this. But if you're on the other end, it feels like you're going, oh my God, and then, oh my God, if you're just in the middle of the seesaw, observing the dance.
So the highs aren't so high and the lows aren't so low. Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And when we talk about the light, the part that I love, always is, but I'm here to create, I'm here to create. And what do I want to get to? What do I want to do? Is this stuff that I'm doing working for me? Is this stuff that I'm carrying around working towards my creations, working towards what I'm wanting to see, It's like being in the kitchen and mixing all these little ingredients that I'm trying to put in the world, because I want to see what I can do. I want to see my capacity and my potential.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of all of our experiences. We can choose. Do you want to achieve certain things? You know, how can I achieve them? Do you want to be someone who just sits around and reads, I don't say just lightly, who sits around and reads books and stares out the ocean and drinks cups of tea? You can choose, you know. Do I want to be a writer and just write all of my, you know, I agree, you know, and you talk about potential, and that's certainly the work that we do. We choose that, you know, we want to help people develop and, you know, and what outcomes they have, and they want to achieve this and they want to achieve that, you know, and that's, I like that. I love that. I've always done that. I've done that since I was a little girl. I've loved transforming something from one thing to another, you know.
It's like seeing your own magic. What can I do with this magic? Oh my God, look at what I've created.
Yeah, and I love that, and that's my personality too, which is why we're both doing this sort of work. And I think, yeah, I would just say that that's the beauty of getting, you know, if you can sort of just get to see that this is a dance, you have choices. What do I want to do then, now that I can see that? What can I choose, you know, to do? And yeah, it might be that you might end up being extremely creative or want to achieve you know, all sorts of different wonderful things that speaks to you, speaks to your authenticity, like you said. And when we discover, you know, our authentic selves, and there isn't, you know, we can release some of that shame or all of it potentially, but, you know, release it and let go of the pressure that it's putting on us and be our authentic selves. We can see what comes up out of that. And we can go back to doing probably what we were put here to do, our own individual selves. What were we here to do? Whatever it might be, you know, just because we're no longer trying to hide in the shade, you know, in the cave as Gollum. We get to express that fully, how we would like to express it, you know, whatever comes up in that way, I think.
And that's where I see the light. Like the light for me, the light part of life is where I'm in my creative expression.
Yeah.
And everything that comes around that, you know, the tools, how do I do that? The skills, the skill building, the learning, how much development I can create to be able to express more in a more effective way, or in a way that can touch others, not just people that are on my wavelength or speak my language, you know.
I hear you. It's good. That's a great way to wrap this up. I think that's a wonderful message, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's exactly the point we're trying to get to.
Yeah. And that's where the personal development is. So, which is what you and I both love.
I love it. I want creative expression too. I want to be able to, and more importantly, I want to be the full Mishy. You know, I want to, what is she? You know, what is she? I want to see those things. I don't want to Gollum them away anymore. I want to see it.
Yeah.
You know? I want to experience it.
And that's our responsibility. It's our responsibility to hit our potential, to hit our purpose and what we're here to do.
Yep, 100%. I agree.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the chat, Misha.
Thank you too, Jess. It was great and very exciting talking about this today.
Yeah, we'll have a catch up, and we'll see everybody in the next podcast.